The scent of whiskey and desperation hung thick in the air of the Golden Rose Saloon, and Olivia Jensen knew that tonight would be the night Marcus Brennan finally came to collect what he believed she owed him. She wiped down the bar with trembling hands, her 22 years weighing on her like decades, as she watched the saloon owner count his evening earnings with eyes that never seemed to blink. The year was 1878, and Wallace, Idaho had grown from a mining camp into a bustling town where fortunes were made and lost with equal speed. But Olivia had only known loss since the day her father died in the Silver Mountain mines 3 years ago. Marcus Brennan was a short man with slicked back hair and a mustache that he waxed into sharp points, giving him the appearance of a rat who had learned to walk upright and wear fine clothes. He owned the Golden Rose, the largest saloon in Wallace, and when Olivia's father had died, Marcus had been there with a smile and an offer. He would pay for the funeral, he said. He would help her get back on her feet. All she had to do was work off the debt at the saloon, serving drinks and entertaining the miners who came down from the mountains with gold dust in their pockets and loneliness in their hearts. What Marcus had not mentioned was that the debt would never decrease. Every week he added new charges, room and board, he said, the cost of her dresses, the food she ate, the candles she burned. 3 years later, Olivia owed him more than she had on the day she started, and Marcus had made it clear that there were other ways for a woman to work off her debt if she was willing. Olivia was not willing, but she could see the patience draining from Marcus's eyes like water through a sieve. "Another round for table 6, Marcus called out, snapping his fingers at her. "And smile this time. You look like someone died." Olivia forced her lips into something resembling a smile and gathered 4 glasses onto a tray. Table 6 was occupied by a group of miners who had been drinking since noon, their voices growing louder with each round. She carried the tray across the crowded room, weaving between tables and dodging grabbing hands with practiced ease. "Here you are, gentlemen," she said, setting down the glasses. One of the miners, a man with a beard full of crumbs and breath that could strip paint, caught her wrist. "How much would it cost for you to join us, sweetheart?" "I'm just here to serve drinks," Olivia said firmly, pulling her arm free. "Everything has a price," the miner said, grinning to show tobacco-stained teeth. "Bet old Marcus would let you sit with us for the right amount." "You would lose that bet," Olivia said, stepping back. "Enjoy your drinks." She returned to the bar, her heart pounding. This was her life now, dancing on the edge of a knife, trying to maintain some shred of dignity while Marcus tightened the noose around her neck. She had tried to leave once 6 months ago, but Marcus had found her before she made it to the stagecoach station. He had dragged her back to the saloon and added the cost of his time to her debt. After that, he had made sure everyone in Wallace knew that Olivia Jensen belonged to the Golden Rose, and anyone who helped her would answer to him. The door to the saloon swung open, letting in a blast of cold November air and a man who had to duck his head to clear the frame. Olivia looked up and felt her breath catch in her throat. The man was massive, standing well over 6 feet tall with shoulders that seemed to span half the doorway. He wore a heavy coat made of bearskin, and his dark hair fell past his shoulders in waves that spoke of months in the wilderness. His beard was thick and well kept, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds as they swept across the room before settling on the bar. He moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through water, men stepping aside without seeming to realize they were doing it. When he reached the bar, he set down a leather pouch that clinked with the sound of coins and looked directly at Olivia. "Whiskey," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like distant thunder. Olivia's hands shook slightly as she poured the drink. Up close, the man was even more imposing. His hands were scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who had spent his life working with them. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he was somewhere in his late 20s. There was a strength in him that went beyond mere physical power, something steady and unshakable that made Olivia feel safer just standing near him. "You are new to Wallace," she said, setting the glass in front of him. "Passing through," he replied. "Came down from the mountains to sell my furs and restock my supplies." "You are a trapper, then?" "Among other things." He took a drink, his eyes never leaving her face. "What is your name?" "Olivia," she said, then hesitated. "Olivia Jensen." "Dalton Kane." He extended his hand across the bar, and after a moment Olivia shook it. His grip was gentle despite the obvious strength in those fingers, and she felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the crowded room. "Olivia!" Marcus's voice cracked across the saloon like a whip. "Stop chattering and get back to work. Table 9 needs service." Olivia pulled her hand back, her cheeks flushing. "Excuse me, Mr. Kane, I have to get back to work." "Of course," Dalton said, but something had changed in his eyes as he looked past her at Marcus. It was a calculating look, the kind a hunter might give when assessing prey. Olivia hurried to table 9, but she could feel Dalton's gaze following her as she moved through the room. It was not like the look she got from the other men, hungry and possessive. His gaze felt protective somehow, though that made no sense. He was just another customer, and by tomorrow he would be back in his mountains and she would still be here, trapped in Marcus's web. The evening wore on, and the crowd grew rowdier. A fight broke out near the piano, and Marcus had to call in his 2 hired men to break it up and toss the combatants into the street. Through it all, Dalton Kane sat at the bar, nursing his whiskey and watching. Olivia found herself drawn to him like iron to a lodestone, finding excuses to return to the bar even when she did not need to. "You have been here a long time," Dalton said during one of these visits. It was not a question. 3 years, Olivia admitted. "That is a long time to be serving drinks." "I have a debt to work off." Something flickered across Dalton's face. "What kind of debt?" Olivia glanced toward Marcus, who was occupied with a game of cards. "My father died in the mines. Marcus paid for the funeral and gave me a job. I owe him for that." "How much?" "I do not see how that is your concern, Mr. Kane." "Dalton," he corrected, "and maybe it is not my concern, but I have spent 3 months alone in the mountains, and I have gotten good at reading people. You do not look like someone who is here by choice." Olivia's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, to pour out the whole miserable story. But what good would it do? "I should get back to work." "If you ever need help," Dalton said quietly, "I'm staying at the boarding house on 3rd Street, room 7. Before Olivia could respond, Marcus appeared at her elbow. "Mr. Kane, I hope my girl has not been boring you with her chatter. Olivia, go help in the kitchen, now." Olivia fled, her heart racing. She spent the next hour scrubbing dishes, her mind churning. Why had Dalton Kane offered to help her? What could he possibly gain from involving himself in her troubles? Men did not help women without expecting something in return. That was a lesson Olivia had learned the hard way. When she finally returned to the main room, Dalton was gone. The spot at the bar where he had sat was empty, and Olivia felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Of course he had left. Why would he stay? "Olivia, come here." Marcus beckoned her to his office, a small room off the back of the saloon. Olivia's stomach dropped, but she had no choice. She followed him inside, and he closed the door behind them. "I have been patient with you," Marcus said, leaning against his desk. 3 years I have given you to work off your debt, and you have barely made a dent in it." "I have been working every day," Olivia protested. "I do everything you ask." "Everything?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Because there are some things I have not asked for yet. But my patience is running thin, Olivia. You are a beautiful woman, and beauty has value. There are men who would pay good money for your company. And I have been turning them away because I thought you would come around on your own. Was I wrong?" Olivia's hands clenched into fists. "I will not do that." "Then you will never pay off your debt," Marcus said flatly. "Do you understand that? The amount you owe grows every month. You will be an old woman before you are free if you live that long. But if you are willing to be more accommodating, we can come to an arrangement." "No," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "I would rather die." Marcus's expression hardened. "That can be arranged too. You are mine, Olivia. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be. Now get out of my office and think about what I said. You have until the end of the week to decide." Olivia stumbled out of the office, her vision blurring with tears. She made it to the back door of the saloon before the sobs overtook her, and she stood in the cold November night, gulping air and trying to calm herself. She could not do what Marcus wanted. She would not. But what choice did she have? If she ran, he would find her again. If she refused, he would make her life a living hell or worse. "Are you all right?" Olivia spun around, her hand flying to her chest. Dalton Kane stood in the shadows at the edge of the building, his bulk making him nearly invisible in the darkness. "What are you doing here?" she gasped. "I saw you come outside," he said, stepping into the light spilling from the saloon's windows. "You were crying." "It is none of your business." "Maybe not." He moved closer, and Olivia could see the concern in his storm-gray eyes. "But I have a feeling something is very wrong here, and I do not like leaving problems unsolved." "You cannot solve this one," Olivia said bitterly. "No one can. Try me." And suddenly, the whole story was pouring out of her. She told him about her father's death, about Marcus's offer, about the debt that never shrank no matter how hard she worked. She told him about the ledger Marcus kept, full of fabricated charges and inflated costs. She told him about the ultimatum she had just received and the choice she could not bring herself to make. Dalton listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. When she finally fell silent, he was quiet for a long moment. "How much do you owe him?" he asked. "According to Marcus, almost $800. But I've seen the ledger. The real amount, the actual funeral costs, and the reasonable value of what he has provided is probably closer to 200. But it does not matter. He will never let me go, no matter how much I pay." "What if someone else paid your debt?" Olivia laughed, a broken sound. "Who would do that? And even if someone did, Marcus would just add new charges. He has made it clear that I belong to him." "No one belongs to anyone," Dalton said, and there was steel in his voice. "I have 8 months' worth of fur money in my room. It is more than enough to cover even Marcus's inflated number, and if he tries to add new charges, he will have to answer to me." Olivia stared at him. "You would do that? You do not even know me." "I know enough," Dalton said. "I know that you deserve better than this. I know that Marcus Brennan is a snake who preys on people who have no one to protect them. And I know that I have spent too long in the mountains alone, and maybe this is why I came down to Wallace, to do something good." "I cannot let you do this," Olivia whispered. "I would just be trading one debt for another." "No debt," Dalton said firmly. "I am not Marcus. I do not want to own you. I just want to help you get free. What you do after that is your choice." "Why?" The question burst from Olivia's lips. "Why would you help me?" Dalton was quiet for a moment, his gaze searching her face. "Because when I look at you, I see someone worth saving. And because I know what it is like to feel trapped. I grew up on a farm in Missouri with a father who thought sons were just free labor. I left when I was 17 and never looked back. The mountains gave me freedom, and I think everyone deserves that." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face now, but they were different tears. "If you do this, Marcus will try to stop you. He has men." "I have dealt with worse than Marcus and his hired thugs," Dalton said. "Will you let me help you, Olivia?" She should say no. She should thank him and walk away and figure out her own solution. But looking into those steady gray eyes, Olivia felt something she had not felt in 3 years. Hope. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, please help me." Dalton nodded. "Go back inside and act normal. Tomorrow morning, I will come to the saloon and settle your debt with Marcus. Pack whatever you want to keep tonight, but keep it hidden. Once your debt is paid, we walk out together, and you never have to come back here again. Where will I go? That is up to you, but I know people in town who can help you find honest work, and I will make sure you have enough money to get started. You will be all right, Olivia, I promise you that." Olivia wanted to throw her arms around him, but she restrained herself. Instead, she reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Dalton. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "No repayment needed," he said. "Just promise me you will build a good life for yourself." "I promise." Olivia returned to the saloon, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She worked the rest of the evening in a daze, barely hearing the crude jokes and vulgar propositions from the customers. Her mind was on tomorrow, on the moment when she would walk out of the Golden Rose forever. That night, after the saloon finally closed and she climbed the stairs to the tiny room Marcus provided for her, Olivia pulled out the small bag she kept hidden under her bed. She packed her few possessions carefully. A dress that had belonged to her mother, a photograph of her parents on their wedding day, a handful of letters her father had written to her mother during their courtship, a small Bible. It all fit into the bag with room to spare. This was the sum total of her life, and it felt both pathetic and liberating. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. What if Dalton changed his mind? What if Marcus refused to accept the payment? What if this was all a cruel dream, and she would wake up to find herself still trapped? But morning came, and with it, hope. Olivia dressed in her best dress, a simple blue cotton that she had managed to keep clean despite Marcus's attempts to charge her for every stain. She brushed her long auburn hair until it shone and pinned it back. If this was the day she reclaimed her life, she wanted to look the part. The saloon was quiet in the morning, with only Marcus and his 2 hired men present. The men were brothers named Tom and Jim Crawford, muscle-bound thugs who did Marcus's dirty work without question. They looked up as Olivia came down the stairs, their expressions neutral but watchful. "You are up early," Marcus said, not looking up from the ledger he was studying. "Do not get any ideas about running off again. Tom and Jim have been instructed to watch you closely." "I'm not running," Olivia said calmly. "I'm just ready to start the day." Marcus grunted and returned to his ledger. Olivia began her morning tasks, sweeping the floor and wiping down tables, but her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Where was Dalton? Had he changed his mind? The door opened and Dalton Kane stepped inside. He looked even larger in the morning light, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. He had cleaned up since last night, his beard trimmed and his hair tied back, and he wore clean clothes that still could not hide the raw power in his frame. He carried a leather satchel in one hand. "Morning," he said, his voice filling the room. "I'm looking for Marcus Brennan." Marcus looked up, his eyes narrowing. "I am Brennan. What can I do for you, Mr. Kane?" "I'm here to settle Miss Jensen's debt." The room went very quiet. Tom and Jim straightened, their hands moving toward the pistols at their belts. Marcus's face went through several expressions before settling on a cold smile. "Is that so? And what business is Olivia's debt to you?" "That's my concern," Dalton said. He moved to the bar and set down the satchel. "You claim she owes you $800. I have that amount here. Once you accept payment, her debt is cleared and she is free to go." Marcus stood slowly, his smile never wavering. "I'm afraid it is not that simple. Olivia's debt is not just financial. She has obligations to this establishment that cannot be settled with money." "What obligations?" Dalton's voice was dangerously quiet. "She has a contract with me, 3 years of service in exchange for room, board, and the payment of her father's funeral expenses. That contract does not expire for another 2 years." "Let me see this contract." Marcus hesitated, then pulled a piece of paper from his desk drawer. Dalton took it and read it carefully. Olivia watched his jaw tighten. "This contract says nothing about a 5-year term," Dalton said. "It says that Miss Jensen agrees to work until her debt is repaid. Well, I am repaying it, right now." "The interpretation of that clause is at my discretion," Marcus said, "and I say her debt is not just financial." "Then you are a liar and a cheat," Dalton said flatly. "But I expected that. So I stopped by the sheriff's office this morning and had a chat with Sheriff Morrison. Interesting man. He told me that several women have made complaints about you over the years, but they all dropped the charges because they were too afraid to testify. He also told me that if there was ever solid evidence of you keeping someone against their will, he would shut you down permanently." Marcus's smile slipped. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering you a choice," Dalton said. "You can accept this payment and let Miss Jensen go. Or you can refuse, and I will go back to the sheriff and tell him that you are holding her in illegal servitude. I will also make sure that every newspaper between here and San Francisco knows about it. How do you think that will affect your business?" Tom and Jim had moved closer, flanking Marcus. They were both armed, and they looked eager to use their weapons. Dalton did not seem concerned. He stood relaxed, his hands at his sides, but Olivia could see the coiled tension in him. He was like a mountain cat, seemingly at ease but ready to explode into violence at any second. "You're making a very big mistake," Marcus said softly. "Do you know who I am in this town? I have friends. Powerful friends." "I do not care if you are friends with God himself," Dalton said. "You are letting Miss Jensen go. Today. Now." The standoff stretched out, tension crackling in the air like lightning. Olivia held her breath, certain that violence was about to erupt. But then Marcus laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Fine," he said. "You want her that badly, you can have her. But let me tell you something, Kane. She is not worth it. She is a mediocre server and a worse conversationalist. You are throwing your money away." "That is my decision to make," Dalton said. He opened the satchel and began counting out money onto the bar. Gold coins clinked against the wood, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet room. Olivia watched in disbelief as the pile grew. $800 was a fortune, more money than she had ever seen in one place. When the count was complete, Dalton pushed the money toward Marcus. "There, her debt is paid in full. Give me a receipt." "A receipt?" Marcus laughed again. "You do not trust me?" "Not even a little bit." Marcus muttered something under his breath, but he pulled out paper and ink and wrote out a receipt stating that Olivia Jensen's debt to the Golden Rose Saloon had been paid in full and she was free to leave. He signed it with an elaborate flourish and shoved it across the bar. Dalton read it carefully, then folded it and put it in his pocket. He turned to Olivia. "Do you have anything you need to collect?" "Just a bag in my room," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "I will be right back." She hurried upstairs, grabbed her bag, and rushed back down. Marcus was scooping the money into a box, his face dark with fury. Tom and Jim looked disappointed that they had not gotten to hurt anyone. "Let's go," Dalton said, offering Olivia his arm. She took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her fingers. Together, they walked toward the door. Olivia could feel Marcus's gaze burning into her back, but she did not look around. She kept her eyes forward, on the sunlight streaming through the open door, on the promise of freedom. "Olivia!" Marcus called out just as they reached the threshold. "You will regret this. You will come crawling back, and when you do, I will not be so forgiving." "That will never happen," Olivia said without turning around. And then she stepped outside into the bright November morning, and the door of the Golden Rose closed behind her forever. The street was busy with morning traffic, miners heading up to the diggings, merchants opening their stores. Olivia stood on the wooden sidewalk, breathing in the cold, clean air, and felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm free," she whispered. "I'm actually free." "You are," Dalton confirmed. He was watching her with a gentle expression that transformed his rugged face. "What do you want to do now?" "I do not know," Olivia admitted. "I have not thought beyond getting out of there." "Well, let us start with breakfast. You look like you could use a decent meal." He led her to a small restaurant a few streets away, a place called Maggie's Kitchen that Olivia had walked past 100 times but never entered. Inside, it was warm and cozy, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of bacon and coffee. A plump woman with gray hair and a kind face came over to their table. "Dalton Kane, I heard you were back in town. And who is this lovely young lady?" "This is Miss Olivia Jensen," Dalton said. "Olivia, this is Maggie Patterson. She makes the best biscuits west of the Mississippi." "Stop your flattery and sit down," Maggie said, but she was smiling. "What can I get for you two?" They ordered breakfast, and as they ate, Dalton explained his plan. He knew a woman named Mrs. Eleanor Foster, who ran a boarding house for respectable women on the other side of town. Mrs. Foster was always looking for help with cooking and cleaning, and the pay was fair. He would introduce Olivia to her, and if they got along, Olivia would have a job and a safe place to stay. "You have this all figured out," Olivia said, marveling at him. "I had all night to think about it," Dalton admitted. "I wanted to make sure you would have options." "Why are you doing all this?" Olivia asked again. "You do not know me. I could be a terrible person for all you know." Dalton set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "I told you last night that I saw someone worth saving. That is true, but there is more to it than that. When I walked into the Golden Rose yesterday and saw you behind that bar, something in me just knew. I cannot explain it. It was like recognizing something I had been looking for without knowing I was looking. Does that make any sense?" Olivia's heart was beating very fast. "Yes," she said softly, "because I felt it too. When you walked in, it was like the whole room changed, like I could breathe for the first time in years." They stared at each other across the table, and Olivia felt heat rising in her cheeks. This was insane. She had just met this man yesterday. She could not possibly be feeling what she thought she was feeling. And yet, looking into those storm-gray eyes, she knew it was real. "I am not looking for anything from you," Dalton said quietly. "I want you to know that. I helped you because it was the right thing to do, not because I expect anything in return. But I would like to get to know you better, if you are willing. No pressure, no obligations, just two people spending time together and seeing where it goes. I would like that, Olivia said, and she realized she was smiling for the first time in longer than she could remember. After breakfast, Dalton took her to meet Mrs. Foster. The boarding house was a neat two-story building with flower boxes in the windows and a sign that read, "Foster House for Ladies." Mrs. Foster herself was a tall, thin woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that saw everything. "So you are the girl Marcus Brennan had working at the Golden Rose," she said after Dalton had made introductions. "I have heard stories." "I am sure you have," Olivia said, lifting her chin, "but I am free of that place now, thanks to Mr. Kane. I'm looking for honest work, Mrs. Foster, and I'm willing to work hard." Mrs. Foster studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I like your spirit. The truth is, I could use the help. My cook quit last week to get married, and I've been trying to manage on my own. Can you cook?" "Yes, madam. My mother taught me before she died." "Good. The job is yours if you want it, room and board included, plus $15 a month. Your room will be on the second floor with the other girls. We have rules here. No men allowed upstairs, no drinking, no smoking, and everyone attends Sunday services. If you can abide by that, we will get along fine." "I can, Mrs. Foster. Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. You will earn every penny. Be ready to start tomorrow morning at 5. We have 12 ladies living here, and they all expect breakfast at 6:30 sharp." Olivia agreed, and Mrs. Foster showed her to a small but clean room on the second floor. It had a real bed with a quilt, a dresser with a mirror, and a window that looked out onto the street. It was the nicest room Olivia had ever had, and she felt her throat tighten with emotion. "This is wonderful," she said when Dalton had carried her bag upstairs for her. "It is a good place," Dalton agreed. "Mrs. Foster is strict, but she is fair, and she looks after her girls. You will be safe here." "Thanks to you." Olivia turned to face him. "Dalton, I know you said no debt, but I have to find some way to repay you. $800 is an incredible amount of money." "I told you no repayment needed. I have more than enough from my furs, and I live simply. The money does not mean as much to me as knowing you are free. Still, I feel like I should do something." Dalton smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "If you really want to do something, have dinner with me tonight. There is a decent restaurant near the livery stable, and I would enjoy your company." "I would love to," Olivia said, returning his smile. They agreed on a time, and Dalton left to attend to his own business in town. Olivia spent the afternoon unpacking her few belongings and exploring Foster House. The other women who lived there were friendly, welcoming her with curiosity but without judgment. They were seamstresses, shop girls, and teachers, all women who worked for a living and prided themselves on their respectability. That evening, Olivia changed into her best dress and met Dalton at the restaurant. It was a simple place, but the food was good and the atmosphere was warm. They talked for hours, and Olivia found herself opening up to him in ways she never had with anyone. He told her about his life in the mountains, about the solitude and the beauty of the wilderness. She told him about her childhood, about her parents, and the happy years before her father had been drawn to the Idaho silver mines. "Do you ever get lonely up there?" Olivia asked. "In the mountains, I mean." "Sometimes," Dalton admitted, "but I have always been comfortable with my own company. I had 3 younger sisters growing up, and the house was always full of noise and chaos. When I got to the mountains, the silence felt like a gift." "3 sisters? Are you close with them?" Dalton's expression grew sad. "I do not know. I have not been back to Missouri since I left. For all I know, they could be married with children of their own by now. My father made it clear I was not welcome, and I did not want to cause trouble for them by trying to visit." "That must be hard." "It is. But I made my choice, and I have to live with it." "What about you? Do you have any family left?" "No. My mother died when I was 15, and my father was all I had. After he died, Marcus was right there with his offer, and I was too grief-stricken and naive to see the trap." "You were not naive," Dalton said firmly. "You were a young woman who had just lost her father and needed help. Marcus took advantage of that. None of what happened is your fault." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you for saying that. I've spent so long blaming myself, thinking I should have been smarter or stronger." "You were strong enough to survive 3 years in that place without losing yourself," Dalton said. "That takes incredible strength, Olivia." You should be proud of that." They walked back to Foster House slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. At the door, Dalton took her hand. "I am heading back to the mountains in a few days," he said. "I need to check my traps and make sure my cabin is ready for winter. But I will be back in the spring, probably around May. Would it be all right if I wrote to you while I am gone?" "I would like that very much," Olivia said. "But do you really have to go? I feel like I just met you." "I do. I have responsibilities up there, and if I do not get back soon, I will be trapped by the winter snows. But I promise I will come back. And in the meantime, we can write to each other and get to know each other better." "I'm not much of a writer," Olivia warned. "Neither am I, but I think we will manage." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Good night, Olivia Jensen. Thank you for a wonderful evening. Good night, Dalton Kane, and thank you for giving me my life back." The next few days passed in a blur. Olivia threw herself into her new job at Foster House, determined to prove that Mrs. Foster had not made a mistake in hiring her. She woke before dawn each morning to prepare breakfast, spending her days cooking, cleaning, and learning the rhythms of the boarding house. The work was hard, but it was honest work, and at the end of each day, she was tired in a satisfying way that had nothing to do with desperation or fear. Dalton came to visit each evening, and they spent their time together walking through Wallace, talking about everything and nothing. Olivia learned that he had taught himself to read as a teenager by trading furs for books. He loved poetry, particularly Wordsworth and Whitman, which seemed at odds with his rugged mountain man appearance, but somehow made perfect sense. He was gentle with animals and had a scar on his left shoulder from a grizzly bear attack he had survived 3 years ago. Olivia told him about her dreams. Before her father died, she had wanted to be a teacher. She loved books and learning, and the idea of shaping young minds had seemed like the most wonderful thing in the world. That dream had died along with her father, buried under the weight of debt and survival. "Why could you not still do that?" Dalton asked. "Wallace needs teachers. I know the current school teacher, Miss Andrews, has been talking about retiring." "I never finished my own schooling," Olivia said. "My mother taught me at home, but I do not have any formal credentials." "So get them. Mrs. Foster told me you have been helping some of the younger girls at the boarding house with their reading. She says you have a gift for it." "She said that?" "She did. And I think you should consider it. You have your freedom now, Olivia. You can build whatever life you want." The idea took root in Olivia's mind and began to grow. A teacher. Could she really do that? It seemed impossible, and yet with Dalton's encouragement, it began to feel possible. On Dalton's last night in Wallace, they had dinner at Maggie's kitchen again. The restaurant had become their special place, and Maggie always had a smile and a kind word for them. Over roast beef and potatoes, they talked about the future. "I know this is fast," Dalton said, his expression serious. "We have only known each other for a week, but I need to tell you that these have been the best days of my life. I've never felt this way about anyone, Olivia. When I'm with you, I feel like I have finally found the place I belong." Olivia's heart was racing. "I feel the same way. It is like I have been waiting my whole life for you to walk into that saloon." "I'm going to be gone for 5 months," Dalton continued. "That is a long time. A lot can happen. You might meet someone else, someone who can give you a more normal life. I would understand that." "I do not want a normal life with someone else," Olivia said. "I want whatever life I can have with you, and I will wait for you, Dalton. 5 months or 5 years, I will wait." Dalton reached across the table and took both her hands in his. "When I come back in the spring, I am going to ask you to marry me. I want you to know that now. So you have time to think about it. I do not have much to offer. I am a mountain man with a cabin in the wilderness and a simple life, but I can promise you that I will spend every day trying to make you happy. I will protect you and provide for you and love you with everything I have." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face. "You do not need to wait until spring to ask me. My answer will be yes. It has been yes since the moment you offered to help me." "Are you sure? You have just gotten your freedom. I do not want you to feel like you were trading one cage for another." "Being with you would not be a cage," Olivia said fiercely. "It would be the opposite. You make me feel like I can do anything, be anything. You believe in me in a way no one ever has. That is not a cage, Dalton. That is wings." He stood and came around the table, pulling her to her feet. Right there in Maggie's kitchen, with half the town watching. He kissed her. It was Olivia's first real kiss, and it felt like coming home. His lips were warm and gentle, and his arms around her were strong and safe. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia was dizzy. "I love you, Olivia Jensen," Dalton said, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you too, Dalton Kane." Maggie was crying and clapping, and several other diners joined in the applause. Olivia laughed, embarrassed and deliriously happy. That night, Dalton walked her back to Foster House one last time. At the door, he pulled a small package from his pocket. "I want you to have this," he said, handing it to her. "Open it after I leave." "What is it?" "Just something to remember me by. And Olivia, be safe while I am gone. If Marcus or his men cause you any trouble, go straight to Sheriff Morrison. He knows the situation, and he has promised to keep an eye on things." "I will. You be safe too. Do not get eaten by any bears." "I will do my best." He kissed her one more time, a long, sweet kiss that Olivia felt all the way to her toes. "I will be back before you know it, and when I come back we will get married and start building our life together." "I will be counting the days." Olivia watched from the window as Dalton walked away into the November darkness, his broad shoulders and confident stride making him easy to follow, even in the dim light of the street lamps. When he finally disappeared from view, she opened the package he had given her. Inside was a beautiful silver locket on a delicate chain. Olivia opened it and found two tiny photographs. One was of Dalton, looking serious and handsome. The other side was empty, waiting for her photograph. There was also a note written in his careful, slightly awkward handwriting. "My dearest Olivia, this locket belonged to my mother. It is the only thing of value I own, and I want you to have it. Wear it and think of me. I will be thinking of you every day. All my love, Dalton." Olivia fastened the locket around her neck and held it against her heart. 5 months suddenly seemed like an eternity, but she would endure it. She had endured worse, and this time, she had something beautiful to look forward to. The weeks passed slowly at first. Olivia settled into her routine at Foster House, and Mrs. Foster proved to be a fair but demanding employer. The work was constant, but Olivia found satisfaction in it. She took pride in preparing meals that the ladies of the house enjoyed, in keeping the rooms clean and welcoming. In her spare time, she helped the younger girls with their studies, and word began to spread about her teaching abilities. In late December, Miss Sarah Andrews, the town's school teacher, came to Foster House for tea with Mrs. Foster. Olivia served them in the parlor, trying not to listen to their conversation, but it was impossible to avoid hearing. "I am serious about retiring, Eleanor," Miss Andrews was saying. "My sister in Oregon has been begging me to come live with her, and I am ready for a change. The problem is finding someone to take over the school." "Have you considered Olivia?" Mrs. Foster said, and Olivia nearly dropped the teapot in surprise. "Your cook?" "She is more than just a cook. I have seen her working with the girls here, Sarah. She has a natural gift for teaching, and the girls adore her. She is patient and kind, but she can be firm when she needs to be." Miss Andrews looked at Olivia with new interest. "Is this true, Miss Jensen? Are you interested in teaching?" "I have always wanted to be a teacher," Olivia admitted, "but I have no formal training." "Neither did I when I started," Miss Andrews said. "I learned on the job, and you could too. Why do not you come observe my classes for a few weeks? If you think it is something you could do, we can talk about next steps." Olivia agreed, and beginning in January, she spent her afternoons at the small schoolhouse on the edge of town. She watched Miss Andrews work with the students, ranging from 6-year-olds learning their letters to teenagers studying history and mathematics. Olivia helped where she could, assisting slower students in grading papers. The work was challenging but deeply rewarding, and she fell more in love with the idea of teaching with each passing day. In February, she received her first letter from Dalton. It had taken weeks to reach her, carried down from the mountains by a fur trader making the winter journey to Wallace. Olivia tore it open with shaking hands. "My dearest Olivia, I hope this letter finds you well and happy. Life in the mountains is cold and quiet, and I spend most of my days checking traps and maintaining my cabin. The work keeps me busy, but my thoughts are always with you. I think about our time together constantly, replaying every conversation and every moment. I wonder what you are doing right now. Are you cooking one of your delicious meals? Are you helping the girls at Foster House with their studies? Are you thinking of me?" I ran into a grizzly last week, not the same one that gave me this scar, but a younger male who was not happy about me being in his territory. We had a standoff for about an hour before he decided I was not worth the trouble and wandered off. It reminded me that life is short and precious and that every moment we have together is a gift. I'm counting the days until I can see you again. Only 3 more months, and then I will be back in Wallace and we can start planning our future. Have you thought any more about teaching? I think you would be wonderful at it. Stay safe, my love. Keep the locket close to your heart and know that you are always in mine. All my love, Dalton. Olivia read the letter a dozen times, memorizing every word. She wrote back immediately, filling pages with news of her days and her growing excitement about the possibility of teaching. She told him about Miss Andrews and the schoolhouse, about the children she was working with, and how much she loved seeing their faces light up when they finally understood a difficult concept. The letters became a lifeline for both of them. Every few weeks another would arrive, and Olivia would devour it, laughing at Dalton's descriptions of his solitary life and feeling her heart swell with love at his declarations of affection. She saved every letter, tying them with a ribbon and keeping them in her dresser drawer like treasures. March came, and with it, trouble. Marcus Brennan had been surprisingly quiet since Olivia left the Golden Rose, but that changed one afternoon when she was walking back from the schoolhouse. Tom Crawford, one of Marcus's men, stepped out of an alley and blocked her path. "Miss Jensen," he said, tipping his hat in a mockery of politeness, "Marcus would like a word with you." "I have nothing to say to Marcus," Olivia said, trying to step around him. Tom moved to block her again. He was not asking. He was telling. Fear coursed through Olivia, but she lifted her chin. "My debt to Marcus is paid in full. I have the receipt to prove it. If he has a problem with that, he can take it up with Sheriff Morrison." "That mountain man is not here to protect you anymore," Tom said, his smile turning ugly. "And accidents happen all the time in Wallace. You should be careful, Miss Jensen. It would be a shame if something happened to you." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm just offering some friendly advice. Marcus takes care of people who respect him, but he does not forget people who make him look like a fool. You made him look like a fool, Miss Jensen. That has consequences." Olivia's heart was pounding, but she refused to show fear. "Get out of my way." Tom laughed and stepped aside. "You have been warned." Olivia hurried back to Foster House, looking over her shoulder the whole way. Once inside, she went straight to Mrs. Foster and told her what had happened. Mrs. Foster's face grew stern. "That man is poison. Stay away from him and his people, Olivia, and I think we should inform the sheriff." They went to Sheriff Morrison together, and the sheriff listened to Olivia's story with a grave expression. "I will have a word with Marcus," he promised, "but you need to be careful, Miss Jensen. Marcus Brennan has a long memory, and he does not like being crossed. Is there someone who can walk with you when you need to go out?" "I can manage on my own," Olivia said, but inside she felt the old fear creeping back. Would she ever truly be free of Marcus? That night, she wrote to Dalton, telling him what had happened. The letter would not reach him for weeks, and his response would take even longer, but just writing it made her feel better. He would know what to do. He would protect her. April arrived with warmer weather and the promise of Dalton's return. Miss Andrews officially announced her retirement, and the town council offered Olivia the position of schoolteacher, pending a trial period. Olivia accepted with joy and trepidation. This was her dream coming true, but it felt strange to celebrate it without Dalton there to share in her happiness. She threw herself into preparing for her new role, studying the curriculum and planning lessons. The children she would be teaching ranged from 6 to 14, covering everything from basic reading and arithmetic to more advanced subjects like history and science. It was daunting, but Olivia felt ready for the challenge. Marcus made no more overt moves, but Olivia could feel him watching her. She would catch glimpses of Tom or Jim Crawford on the street, always just far enough away to seem innocent, but close enough to remind her that they were there. She varied her routes and made sure she was never alone after dark, but the constant vigilance was exhausting. Finally, in the first week of May, Dalton returned. Olivia was in the kitchen at Foster House preparing dinner when Mrs. Foster came in with a smile on her face. "You have a visitor," she said, "a rather large visitor who's been asking for you." Olivia did not even pause to remove her apron. She ran through the boarding house and out the front door, and there he was. Dalton Kane, standing on the sidewalk with a bouquet of wildflowers in his hands and a smile on his face that made Olivia's heart soar. "Dalton!" She flew down the steps and into his arms, and he caught her easily, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "Hello, my love," he said, setting her down gently. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too. I thought May would never come." He handed her the flowers, and she buried her face in them, breathing in their sweet scent. They were mountain flowers, the kind that grew at high elevations, and she knew he must have picked them specially for her. "You look beautiful," Dalton said, his eyes drinking her in. "Even more beautiful than I remembered." "You look wonderful too. Thinner, maybe. Have you been eating properly?" "Beans and jerky, mostly. I'm looking forward to some of your cooking." They went inside, where Mrs. Foster had discreetly disappeared to give them some privacy in the parlor. They sat close together on the sofa, holding hands and talking over each other in their eagerness to share everything that had happened during their separation. Olivia told him about the teaching position, and Dalton's face lit up with pride. "That is wonderful. I knew you could do it." "It is only a trial at first," Olivia cautioned. "If the town council does not think I am doing a good job, they will find someone else. They would be fools to let you go. You are going to be the best teacher Wallace has ever had." Then Olivia told him about Marcus and the threats from Tom Crawford. Dalton's expression darkened. "I should have known he would not let it go," he said grimly. "That ends now. I am going to have a conversation with Marcus, and I am going to make it very clear that if anything happens to you, he will answer to me. Dalton, I do not want you to get in trouble because of me." "You are not getting me in trouble. Marcus is, and he needs to understand that you are not alone anymore. You have people who care about you and will protect you." He cupped her face in his large, calloused hands. "You have me, Olivia, and I will always protect you." They talked until dinner time, when Mrs. Foster diplomatically reminded them that Olivia had responsibilities in the kitchen. Dalton left with a promise to return the next day, and Olivia floated through the evening's tasks on a cloud of happiness. He was back. He was really back, and everything was going to be all right. The next morning, Dalton went to the Golden Rose. Olivia did not witness what happened there, but she heard about it from half a dozen sources. Dalton had walked into the saloon, picked Marcus up by the front of his fancy suit, and pinned him against the wall. He had informed Marcus in a voice that carried through the entire establishment that if Olivia Jensen was bothered in any way, if she so much as saw Tom or Jim Crawford on the street, Dalton would personally ensure that Marcus regretted it for the rest of his life. Then he had set Marcus down, nodded politely to the stunned customers, and walked out. Sheriff Morrison, when he heard about it, just laughed and told his deputies that maybe Marcus would think twice about harassing innocent women in the future. After that, Marcus and his men gave Olivia a wide berth. She still saw them occasionally, but they never approached her or even looked in her direction. The constant fear she'd been living with began to ease, and she could finally breathe freely. Dalton stayed in Wallace for 2 weeks, and they were the happiest 2 weeks of Olivia's life. They spent every moment they could together, walking through the woods outside town, having picnics by the river, talking about their future. Dalton told her about his cabin in the mountains, describing it in such vivid detail that Olivia could almost see it. It was small but sturdy, built into the side of a mountain with a view of the valley below. There was a creek nearby for water, and the hunting and trapping were excellent. "It is beautiful up there," Dalton said, "peaceful, but it is also isolated. The nearest neighbor is 10 miles away, and in the winter you can be snowed in for weeks at a time. I need you to understand that before you agree to marry me. It is not an easy life, Olivia." "I do not need an easy life," Olivia said. "I just need to be with you. But what about my teaching? I've just gotten this position, and I do not want to give it up." "You do not have to," Dalton said. "What if we lived in Wallace during the school year and spent the summers at the cabin? I can still trap in the winter, but I will come back to town more often. We can make it work, Olivia. We just have to be willing to compromise." It was a perfect solution, and Olivia threw her arms around him in delight. "You would do that for me? You would give up your solitary life in the mountains?" "I would give up anything for you," Dalton said seriously. "The mountains are beautiful, but they are empty without you. I realized that over the winter. All that silence that I used to love felt hollow. I kept thinking about your laugh and your voice, and I knew that I could never go back to living alone. You are my home now, Olivia. Wherever you are is where I want to be." They made plans. Dalton would stay in Wallace through the summer, working odd jobs and helping to build a small house for them on a piece of land he was going to purchase on the outskirts of town. They would get married in June, a small ceremony with just a few friends. In the fall, Olivia would begin her new position as schoolteacher, and they would settle into their life together. The proposal itself happened on a beautiful May evening. Dalton had arranged a picnic by the river, and as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he got down on one knee. "Olivia Jensen," he said, pulling out a simple gold ring. "I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. You have brought light and joy into my life, and I cannot imagine spending another day without you. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Olivia said through happy tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring fit perfectly, and as Dalton slipped it onto her finger, Olivia felt like the luckiest woman in the world. 6 months ago, she had been trapped in a nightmare with no hope of escape. Now she was engaged to the most wonderful man she had ever met, with a teaching position she loved and a bright future ahead of her. The wedding took place on a warm Saturday in June. It was held at the small church in Wallace, with Mrs. Foster, Maggie Patterson, Miss Andrews, Sheriff Morrison, and a handful of other friends in attendance. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Foster had helped her make, and she carried a bouquet of the same mountain flowers Dalton had given her when he returned from the wilderness. Dalton wore a new suit that he had bought specially for the occasion, and he looked both handsome and uncomfortable in it. Olivia could tell he was counting the minutes until he could change back into his comfortable work clothes, and she loved him even more for suffering through it for her sake. The ceremony was short and sweet. They exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Dalton did not hesitate. He pulled Olivia into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, to the applause and laughter of their guests. The reception was held at Maggie's kitchen, which Maggie had closed to the public for the afternoon. There was food and music and dancing, and Olivia felt like she was living in a dream. She danced with her new husband, his strong arms holding her close as they swayed to the music. "Happy?" Dalton murmured against her hair. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Olivia replied. "Thank you for finding me, Dalton. Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself," Dalton corrected gently. "You survived 3 years in that place and came out stronger. I just helped open the door. You were the one who walked through it." That night they moved into a small rented room above the general store while their house was being built. It was not much, but it was theirs, and that was all that mattered. Olivia had never been with a man before, and she was nervous, but Dalton was patient and gentle, taking his time to make sure she was comfortable. Making love to him was nothing like Olivia had feared it would be during her time at the Golden Rose, when men had looked at her with hungry eyes and made crude suggestions. With Dalton, it was beautiful and tender, an expression of the love they shared. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, and Olivia traced the scar on Dalton's shoulder from his bear attack. "Tell me the story of how you got this," she said. "It is not a very romantic story for our wedding night." "I do not care. I want to know everything about you." So Dalton told her about the day he had surprised a grizzly near his trap line. The bear had reared up, and Dalton had managed to get one shot off before it was on him. The shot had saved his life, hitting the bear in the shoulder and making it retreat, but not before it had left its mark on Dalton. He had managed to make it back to his cabin, where he had spent 2 weeks delirious with fever, fighting off infection. It had been a close thing, and there were times when he thought he was going to die alone in the mountains. "What kept you alive?" Olivia asked. "Stubbornness, mostly," Dalton said with a laugh, "and the knowledge that I had not done everything I wanted to do yet. I think part of me knew that I was waiting for something. Someone. Now I know I was waiting for you." The summer passed in a blur of happiness. Dalton worked on their house with the help of several men from town, and Olivia prepared for the upcoming school year. She spent hours at the schoolhouse, organizing materials and planning lessons. She was determined to be the best teacher she could be, to prove that the town council had made the right decision in hiring her. In July, Marcus Brennan left Wallace. No one knew exactly why, but rumor had it that some of his shadier business dealings had caught up with him, and he had decided to try his luck elsewhere. The Golden Rose was sold to new owners, a husband and wife team who promised to run it as a respectable establishment. Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders when she heard the news. Marcus was gone, and she would never have to fear him again. By August, the house was finished. It was a small two-bedroom structure with a kitchen, a living area, and a front porch that looked out toward the mountains. Dalton had built it with his own hands, and every board and nail spoke of his love and care. Olivia fell in love with it the moment she stepped inside. They moved in on a sunny August morning, carrying their few possessions through the front door. Olivia ran from room to room, marveling at the details Dalton had included. The shelves he had built into the walls for her books, the large kitchen with plenty of counter space for cooking and baking, the sturdy furniture he had made from mountain timber. "It is perfect," she said, throwing her arms around him. "Absolutely perfect. I am glad you like it. I wanted to make you a home worthy of you." Any home is worthy when you are in it. They christened each room that day, laughing and making love like newlyweds should. That evening, they sat on the front porch and watched the sunset over the mountains, Olivia nestled against Dalton's side. "I have been thinking," Dalton said. "Once the school year's over next summer, would you like to spend some time at the cabin? I would like to show you that part of my life." "I would love that," Olivia said. "I want to see where you lived all those years, and I want to understand what drew you to the mountains." "It is going to be rough living. No neighbors, no conveniences, just us in the wilderness." "That sounds wonderful." In September, Olivia began her first full term as the Wallace schoolteacher. She was nervous on that first day, standing in front of a classroom of 20 children ranging from 6 to 14. But as she began to teach, she felt all her nervousness fall away. This was what she was meant to do. The children responded to her patience and enthusiasm, and even the rowdier boys settled down under her calm but firm guidance. Dalton often stopped by during his lunch break, bringing her food and checking to see how her day was going. The children quickly grew used to seeing the large mountain man with the kind eyes, and some of the younger ones even started calling him Mr. Kane and asking him about his adventures. The school year progressed smoothly. Olivia found that she loved teaching even more than she had expected. Each day brought new challenges and new rewards. Seeing a child's face light up when they finally understood a difficult concept, or hearing them read a passage fluently after weeks of struggle, filled her with a satisfaction that went bone deep. At home, life with Dalton was everything Olivia had dreamed it would be. He was a thoughtful husband, always considering her needs and trying to make her happy. He helped with the household chores without being asked, cooked dinner on days when Olivia was exhausted from teaching, and held her when she needed comfort after a difficult day. They talked about everything under the sun. Dalton had educated himself during his years in the mountains, reading every book he could get his hands on, and he loved discussing philosophy, history, and literature with Olivia. They would spend hours debating the merits of different poets or arguing about historical events, their conversations ranging far and wide. In November, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but she waited until she was certain before telling Dalton. She chose a quiet evening at home, after they had finished dinner and were sitting by the fire. "Dalton," she said, taking his hand, "I have something to tell you." He looked at her, his expression concerned. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is perfect." "Dalton, we are going to have a baby." For a moment, Dalton just stared at her. Then a smile spread across his face, so wide and joyful that it made Olivia laugh. "A baby," he said. "We are going to have a baby?" "Yes, I think around June, if my calculations are right." Dalton let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around before carefully setting her back down. "I'm going to be a father. Olivia, I'm going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Olivia said, wiping away happy tears. "You are so gentle and patient. Our child is so lucky to have you." "Our child is lucky to have you," Dalton corrected. "You are going to be an amazing mother." He placed his large hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. Your father cannot wait to meet you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Olivia continued teaching through the winter and into the spring, though she had to stop in May when it became too difficult to stand for long periods. The town council had already agreed to hire a temporary replacement for the end of the school year and to hold her position for her return the following September. Dalton became even more protective during the pregnancy, constantly worrying about Olivia and making sure she was comfortable. He read every book on childbirth he could find, asking the town doctor endless questions. Olivia found his concern endearing, even when it became a bit overwhelming. In early June, their son was born. It was a long, difficult labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Dalton stayed by Olivia's side the entire time, holding her hand and encouraging her. When their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Olivia looked into his tiny, perfect face and felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it took her breath away. "He is beautiful," Dalton said, his voice choked with emotion as he held his son for the first time. "He is perfect, Olivia. Look at him." They named him Daniel, after Olivia's father. He had Dalton's dark hair and Olivia's green eyes, and from the moment he was born, he had both of his parents completely wrapped around his tiny fingers. The summer of 1879 was one of the happiest times of Olivia's life. She spent her days caring for Daniel, marveling at every new sound and expression. Dalton was a devoted father, taking to the role with an enthusiasm that delighted Olivia. He would spend hours holding Daniel, talking to him in a low, gentle voice, or walking with him when he was fussy. In August, when Daniel was 2 months old and big enough to travel, Dalton fulfilled his promise to take Olivia to his cabin in the mountains. They made the journey slowly, with Dalton carrying most of their supplies and Olivia carrying Daniel in a sling against her chest. The trip took 3 days, following mountain trails that wound through pine forests and along rushing streams. The cabin, when they finally reached it, was everything Dalton had described and more. It was small but solidly built, nestled into the side of a mountain with a spectacular view of the valley below. Inside, it was spare but comfortable, with a stone fireplace, a bed, a table and chairs, and shelves full of books. "This is where you lived for all those years?" Olivia said, looking around. "Dalton, it is wonderful." "It is home," Dalton said, "or it was before I met you. Now, home is wherever you and Daniel are." They spent 2 weeks at the cabin, and Olivia fell in love with the wilderness. Dalton taught her how to fish and identify edible plants. They hiked through the forests, Daniel contentedly sleeping in his sling. At night, they sat on the porch and watched the stars, so bright and numerous that they seemed to cover the entire sky. "I understand why you loved it here," Olivia said one evening. "It is so peaceful, so beautiful." "It is," Dalton agreed, "but it was also lonely. I did not realize how lonely until I met you and understood what I had been missing." "Do you ever regret leaving it behind, coming to live in town?" "Never. Not for a single moment. You and Daniel are worth more than 1,000 cabins in the wilderness. You are my family, Olivia, my life, everything I ever wanted, and more than I ever dreamed I could have." Olivia leaned against him, feeling his warmth and strength. "I love you, Dalton Kane." "I love you too, Olivia Kane." They returned to Wallace in September, and Olivia resumed her teaching position. Mrs. Foster had agreed to watch Daniel during the day, and though Olivia missed him terribly, she knew he was in good hands. Teaching continued to fulfill her in ways she had never expected, and she found that she could balance her roles as mother, wife, and teacher with grace. The years passed, marked by small joys and occasional challenges. In 1881, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Emma. She had Olivia's auburn hair and Dalton's storm gray eyes, and she was as fierce and stubborn as both her parents combined. Daniel adored his little sister, appointing himself her protector from the day she was born. Olivia's teaching career flourished. She became known throughout the region as an excellent educator, and parents clamored to have their children in her classes. The school grew, and eventually the town built a larger schoolhouse to accommodate more students. Olivia was offered the position of headmistress, which she accepted with pride. Dalton continued to trap in the mountains during the winter, but he always came home regularly, never staying away for more than a week or 2 at a time. In the summers, the whole family would spend time at the cabin, teaching Daniel and Emma to love the wilderness as Dalton did. In 1883, they had a third child, another son they named Thomas. He was a quiet, thoughtful child who loved books even more than his mother did. By the time he was 4, he could read simple stories on his own, and Olivia knew he would grow up to be a scholar. Life was not without its difficulties. There were harsh winters and lean times. There were illnesses and accidents. Daniel broke his arm falling from a tree when he was 8. Emma nearly died from scarlet fever when she was 5. And Olivia and Dalton spent 3 terrifying days at her bedside before she finally turned the corner. Thomas was born premature and weak, and they were not sure he would survive his first year. But he was stronger than he looked, and he thrived under his parents' loving care. Through it all, Olivia and Dalton's love for each other only grew stronger. They had built a life together from nothing, creating a family and a home filled with love and laughter. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, they took a rare evening to themselves, leaving the children with Mrs. Foster and going to Maggie's kitchen for dinner. "Do you ever think about that day I walked into the Golden Rose?" Dalton asked, holding Olivia's hand across the table. "All the time," Olivia admitted. "I think about how different my life would be if you had not come to Wallace that day. I probably would have died in that place or become someone I did not recognize." "No," Dalton said firmly. "You would have found a way out. You were too strong, too determined to have let Marcus destroy you. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to help." "You did more than help. You gave me a reason to hope again. You showed me that there were still good men in the world, men who helped without expecting anything in return." "I got plenty in return," Dalton said with a smile. "I got you. I got our children. I got a life richer and fuller than anything I could have imagined in my lonely cabin." "We have been lucky," Olivia said. "We have been blessed," Dalton corrected, "and I thank God for you every single day." As the years continued to pass, Olivia watched her children grow into remarkable people. Daniel, tall and strong like his father, became a skilled tracker and hunter. At 16, he announced his intention to become a deputy sheriff, wanting to protect people the way his father had protected his mother. Dalton was bursting with pride. Emma, fierce and independent, shocked everyone by declaring that she wanted to be a doctor. It was an unusual ambition for a young woman, but Olivia and Dalton supported her completely. They sent her to study in San Francisco, where she excelled at her studies and eventually became one of the first female physicians in Idaho. Thomas, as expected, became a teacher like his mother. He took over Olivia's classes when she finally retired at the age of 50, continuing the legacy she had built. Olivia and Dalton aged gracefully together. Dalton's hair turned silver and his beard grew white, but he remained strong and vital well into his 60s. Olivia's auburn hair also silvered and laugh lines crinkled around her eyes, but Dalton told her she was more beautiful than ever. They spent their later years splitting time between their house in Wallace and the cabin in the mountains. Their children visited regularly, bringing grandchildren who filled the house with noise and laughter. Daniel had 4 children of his own, Emma had 2, and Thomas had 3. Olivia and Dalton loved being grandparents, spoiling the little ones in ways they had never allowed themselves to spoil their own children. On a warm summer evening in 1910, Olivia and Dalton sat on the porch of their mountain cabin watching the sunset. They were in their 70s now, their bodies slower, but their minds still sharp. Olivia leaned against Dalton, his arm around her shoulders, and thought about the incredible journey they had shared. "I've been thinking about that day you paid my debt," Olivia said. "Do you remember what Marcus said? That I was not worth it?" "I remember," Dalton said, his voice still deep and strong despite his age. "He could not have been more wrong. You got so much more than you paid for. You got a wife, a family, a lifetime of love." "I would have paid 10 times that amount," Dalton said, 100 times. "You have made my life worth living, Olivia. Every day with you has been a gift. And every day with you has been an adventure. Even the quiet days, the ordinary days, they were all precious because I spent them with you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sun dipped below the mountains and the first stars began to appear. Olivia thought about the girl she had been, trapped and hopeless in the Golden Rose, and the woman she had become. She had been a teacher, a mother, a wife. She had made a difference in the lives of countless children. She had built a family and a legacy that would continue long after she was gone. And it had all started with a mountain man who walked into a saloon and saw someone worth saving. "I love you, Dalton Kane," Olivia whispered. "I love you too, Olivia Kane," Dalton replied. today, tomorrow, and forever. They remained on the porch until the stars filled the sky, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Their love story had started in desperation and darkness, but it had bloomed into something bright and enduring, a testament to the power of hope, courage, and two hearts that recognized each other at first sight. In the years that followed, they continued to cherish each passing day. Dalton passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, with Olivia holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, but took comfort in the knowledge that they had had so many wonderful years together. She lived another 5 years after his death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren before she joined him. They were buried side by side on a hillside overlooking Wallace under a large oak tree. Their headstone was simple: Dalton and Olivia Kane, beloved parents and grandparents, together forever. But those who knew them understood that the headstone could never fully capture what they had meant to each other and to everyone whose lives they had touched. Their children and grandchildren continued to tell their story, passing it down through the generations. It became a family legend, the tale of how a mountain man had walked into a saloon, paid a debt, and walked out with the love of his life. It was a story of courage and kindness, of love conquering fear, of two people who had found each other in the darkness and created light together. And in Wallace, Idaho, where the story had begun so many years ago, people still spoke of Olivia and Dalton Kane with fondness and respect. The school that Olivia had led for so many years was eventually named in her honor, and a scholarship fund was established to help young women pursue education. Dalton's contributions to the community were also remembered, particularly his willingness to stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. Their story was not one of princes and princesses, of wealth and luxury. It was better than that. It was a story of real people who had faced real challenges and overcome them through love, determination, and faith in each other. It was a story that proved that sometimes, in the darkest moments, help could come from the most unexpected places. That one act of kindness could change everything. That love, when it was true and deep and lasting, could transform lives and create legacies that endured long after the lovers themselves had passed on. And so the story of the mountain man and the saloon girl, of Dalton and Olivia Kane, lived on, inspiring new generations to believe in the power of love and the possibility of redemption. It was a story that had started with $800 and a leap of faith, and it had become something priceless, a love that had lasted a lifetime and beyond, a family that spanned generations, and a reminder that even in the wildest, hardest times, love could bloom and flourish and create something beautiful that would never be forgotten. Their great-grandchildren still visited the cabin in the mountains, maintaining it as a family retreat and a reminder of where it all began. They still read the letters that Olivia and Dalton had exchanged during their first winter apart, marveling at the eloquence and depth of feeling in those carefully written pages. They still wore the silver locket that Dalton had given Olivia, passing it down from generation to generation as a symbol of enduring love. And sometimes, on quiet summer evenings, when the family gathered at the cabin and sat on the porch watching the sunset, they could almost feel the presence of Olivia and Dalton there with them, still together after all these years, still watching over the family they had created and the legacy they had built. The love story that had begun in a saloon in Wallace, Idaho in 1878 had become something eternal, a testament to the fact that true love never really ends. It just transforms, growing and spreading, touching new lives and creating new stories forever and always.